kind of my idea.
All
You're
right.
already recording?
We're on Jesus TV, and if there's any doubt about that, you can see there's a sign. You could call it a token. You could call it a sign and token. This is Jesus TV, the block. And what we're doing right now is still being broadcast as part of Suffer Well, Healed by His Stripes, which is a Jesus TV program. And it follows the theme of suffering. We're all going to suffer, but some of us learn how to suffer weller, and that's kind of the goal. So Jesus suffered; that was his superpowers. So I'm just reminding what we went back in earlier episodes. We described these things on the episode of many episodes where we've mentioned that life is quite distressing, and learning to go into those stressful times with tools can be helpful. That there's people around you who have the same circumstances, and they're not suffering maybe as much as you, or it feels like they're not suffering at all, but it might be because they've learned how to suffer well. And one way we suffer well is by caring for others. So if you see others that are maybe having the same circumstances, you might assume that maybe they haven't learned to suffer well, or I don't know. I don't have it all figured out. I'm still in kindergarten. Jesus, when I got born again, he said, become like a little child. And he told me, you're going to go into kindergarten and you're going to stay there for the rest of your life. And so all those things you thought you knew and had figured out, you're going to have to learn again. And so here we are in kindergarten, and one of our students is going to paint with her fingers. She's also learning how to return to childhood, because that's what I remember, painting with my fingers. Then after that, they said, oh, paint with a brush. And things started getting further away from me because my fingers are right here. I got brushes right here. But yeah, so this is Emily Powell, and she does messy art like I do. I don't know if people are used to Jesus TV. It's kind of messy in some ways. And we were just trying to figure out some sound system, and Jonathan and he thought the problem was on my end. Greg, I can't hear you. Your microphone's off. Well, I was blaming him. I'm like, hey, I think your speaker's off. We'll have to wait until Jesus's artist comes. And then she came on and she could hear me. So then but by then Jonathan had humbled himself and messed around with his speakers and realized, oh, okay, sorry, it's me. But it's not Jonathan. It's the nature of our life. Sometimes we think it's us, but no, life's pretty complicated. And so what you'll see as we talk, this is now after the holidays, so we took off for a couple of weeks to take a break, and we look forward to getting together again and talking about Jesus and other things. And that's one of the topics I want to talk about, because when you're talking about other things, you're actually talking about Jesus, whether you know it or not, because he's in all things, through all things. You don't have to acknowledge him, so you can just talk about somebody without talking about him. Like, no, I wasn't talking about you, but Jesus, you can't escape him, because he's in all things, through all things, and he's always talking. And it's just a matter if you're listening. And that's a movie that I'm making with Jesus, because that's how Jesus talks to me, is in movie making. And I think, Emily, Jesus talks to you in this. So I'll give it up to you and Jonathan for a little while, but maybe you could touch upon that. There's a communication, I would assume, that's going on.
Okay. Well, first I'll explain what I'm doing a little bit. A couple thoughts. So yeah, Jesus speaks to me visually, but he also uses like words and ideas. And I think kind of similar to Jonathan in that for me, writing is a really powerful tool for me to take time to listen to Jesus. I have a lot of ADHD, and so I mean that's why I have to paint while we talk, because if we were just talking, I'd probably be bored. Um, so I just, and so I have to be able to focus, and writing is one of those things that can help me focus. Um, and also visually, sometimes it's like I have to paint it, and then when I have to take time to, whenever I take that time to sit and think, and I usually try to do haikus. Um, when I write about my art. Sometimes I do, sometimes they're not haikus, but I try to say in as few words as possible is the whole point. Um, yeah. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. And right now what I'm doing, it's kind of a funny paint session here, because I was gonna scrape it off with this tool, but then my blade broke and all my other razor blades are out in my garage. So I guess, and then I was going to use this one, and this one's all caked up in paint. And again, my extra razor blades are in the garage. So this should be interesting. So then I was like, well, why don't we just make a really big mess? Maybe I'll just take this paper and I'll just put it on here, and then maybe I'll just like smear it on. And I might go that approach. I don't know what we're going to do exactly. I also kind of want to I like putting white. These ones, these are like, this is one that my kids helped me do. And this is like super messy. And I have a whole stack. Today I decided I wanted to paint small. I just kind of wanted to do a start to finish one. And so these are a bunch of ones that I've had. I have a ton. I have stacks and stacks of boards and things that are just like ready to go. And so I don't know. That's kind of what I was thinking about today. But yeah, Jonathan, you can go ahead.
Well, that sounds good. Yeah, now I have to think of something to say, which I will. Just give me a sec. No, it's okay. So do you have any idea of what direction you're going to go, or are you just going to see what kind of comes as you put paint on the canvas?
I'm going to see what comes, but they all kind of end up looking a little bit similar. Yeah. Just when I paint with my fingers, like, well, I really liked how, and I hadn't considered this before until you said this today, Greg, but painting with your hands is definitely like kindergarten and very child, like very much like a kid thing. And I hadn't considered that. One of the reasons that I love painting with my hands with other tools is I feel like I have to get in the material. There's not like because when I'm using brushes and things, I feel like there's kind of like a separation. I don't know. And it sounds really weird, but I wear gloves, but I actually like the feeling of like, there's a lot of different textures when you're painting with your hands. Like this is oil paint. And sometimes like right here, it's like really kind of slimy. If I go like that, it's like a bit slimy. When I use this one, I'm going to get, I have like an oil-based paint primer in this can here. And when I get that, it kind of has a drier feel and it dries really, really fast. Which is funny because it's oil-based primer, but it like soaks into when I use it with these other materials. And I have to like work really fast to scrape it away. So it kind of makes me, so I like to use materials that just really limit me. And it forces me to, again, become like a child. Because I think when you're a child, you are limited. Like what you can do is so limited. You can't go drive. You know, when I was little, I was like, I can't wait till I have a job and I can be like an adult and do real things. But life gets so much more complex the more things you add in. So I think there's something about simplifying. Like I said, there's a lot of reasons why I paint like this, but the more I think about it, you can find a lot of symbolism behind it. Yeah. So reaching to that inner child. You know, we also talk, I think it also ties into the whole idea of like, imagine Jesus, right? I think it also ties into that idea too. And I don't know. I like that.
Yeah, I like it too. It's where Jesus had to take me. So it's a parable of kindergarten. So I'm a Jesus street preacher. And I didn't ever street preach before. I don't, what is that? I don't know. You just like, well, that's like Emily making stuff up. It's like, but then I feel like, well, hold it. Yeah, I made it up, but I don't think I'm that smart to decide who I am. And so and I've given my life to Christ. So if I'd given my life to Buddha, I'd say Buddha did that. Or if I'd given my life to a rock, I'd say the rock showed me. Or if I'd given it to myself, if I had Frankie's energy, which is I did it my way, then I could say, oh, I gave it up to myself. I claimed my personal power. but I didn't because I was tired of my personal power. Because my personal power within this operating system called U.S. Antichrist, all those well in Zion, Babylon, cult. The cult I was born into works for some people quite well. It doesn't work for me very well. It doesn't work for Jonathan very well. And it probably doesn't work very well for Emily. But some people it works for. And in fact, the vast majority, it works good enough. And maybe it's my desire for something more, but nonetheless, my own powers weren't working very good. And I finally just gave up. And one way you can give up is just kill yourself. I'm out of here. I didn't feel to do that. I felt to symbolically give up and surrender myself. What some people would comfortably say, surrender yourself to the wind or surrender yourself to the flow. But that's not who announced himself in 2015. I'm like, who's talking to me? And his name was Jesus. And of course, I'm paraphrasing because he doesn't even talk that way. But that's how I reimagine it. And he says, my name's Jesus. So then I start talking with this Jesus, and you could say, oh, you were talking with your imagination? Yes, my sacred imagination. He has many names, the Great Spirit, my sacred imagination, Jesus, the universe. I'm comfortable with them all, but since he said his name was Jesus, that's what I call him, and that's what he kind of wants me to call him, and I'm fine. I've resolved in that, but I like that other people have other names for whatever that is. And but one of the things he told me is, now that you're born again, I need you to literally be like a little child. Because I thought of that scripture, except you be as a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of God. Well, I had no idea how literal he was. And so when Emily came into our lives, it blew my mind. I'm like, she's painting like we did in kindergarten. I'm like, oh my goodness, look what you've led me to. A Jesus that's painted with fingers. But what it did is it echoed everything he'd been doing with me for years, that he'd been taking me lower and lower in ways that look ridiculous to people in my church congregation, to my family. And honestly, one of the themes of what I was doing, it looked immature. And for a 59-year-old, it looked super immature because I wasn't even close. You know, if you're 26 or 22, you can still do pretty childish things and people let it go. But once you hit your 40s, dude, grow up. You got to, and like, I can't. I just died and I'm like a little kid. I guess there's some scriptural language. It's called, I've become a new creature. And now I'm an extrovert. I believe there's a lot of people who get born again. You never see this stuff coming, but God made me like a loudmouth. Oh, when Greg gets born again, he's going to tell everybody what it's like. And I'm going to go around saying, it's like being a freaking little teeny kid. At least, but I also know when people are born again, become a new creature, or die into themselves, it doesn't always get expressed like that. Sometimes they probably say, when I was a child, I understood as a child, but now I put away childish things. I'm like, I didn't. I picked up childish things. I go swimming with Jesus in the Jesus pool, that I call it the Jesus pool, that has crosses at both ends, and I swim to the cross like some little kid, and I touch the cross. And I talk about things like that. Oh yeah, Jesus has this pool, and he lets other people swim, which is good because it's his pool. But it's actually the Mount Pleasant Aquatic Center. Oh yeah, that's true. For other people, that's what it's called. And I allow that. But I feel like a billionaire. I've got a pool. Yeah, I got a pool like Donald Trump. And it's a huge pool. And they're going to redo the floors in March. And it's like I'm a little kid telling a story. Oh, my daddy's doing this. My daddy's doing that. Who's your daddy? Jesus is my daddy. And so it became very hard and so also very easy to manage that energy. So I was born to be like who I am now, this new creature. And I'm like, oh, well, some of this is easy, but part of the thing that's hard is actually still being an adult, 59 years old, having to take care of a family, all these complexities. Hey, Jesus, now you made me like a little child, but I still have to feed my family. He goes, I know, but I'm going to be doing that for you. What? Yeah, I'm going to be taking care of you now, Greg. I'm going to fight your fights. I'm going to feed your family. Okay, you're going to get me toilet paper? Yeah, we're going to do it like we did at home. You're going to, Daddy's going to tell you, go get some toilet paper. Oh, well, I think I need some Jesus money. And so then I have to go digging around like I did last night for coins because it was milk. So I dig around for coins. I tell my son, let me get some coins. And I find some coins and I count. I go, oh, Matthew, you can buy yourself a treat because there's extra coins there. And so that looks to my carnal mind, because I still got one of those too, rather childish, even to describe it like that. But I died. So the person talking to you, I'm done with the normal world. And I will talk this way, I think, the rest of my life. But I also want to acknowledge there's people who are born again in different ways, because God has taught me that there's going to be different ways that people, that I animate people differently when they become new creatures. And so let me tie it back to kindergarten and why, Emily, what you do is just so delightful for me. Because one of the parables he gave me is you're going to go to school. Now, Joseph Smith, he was imaginative too, and he created this thing called the School of the Prophets. Oh, excellent, Jesus, I'm going to School of the Prophets. No, Greg, you're going to go to kindergarten. I'm going to kindergarten. Yes, you're going to go to kindergarten because you're an idiot. I need to retrain you because you were trained up. You got your PhD in Babylon. That's like the worst thing you could ever do. But he, of course, led me to that so that I could understand certain things and then go back to kindergarten. And then he tells me, and you're never going to leave kindergarten. And every mortal that you've ever met is in kindergarten. You've never met a first grader or a second grader, that they're all idiots. They're all relative idiots. And they have to, some of them don't think they are. Some of them think they're in graduate school or they think they're first graders. He says there are some gifted and talented first graders, kindergartners. So you'll see some people who have a lot more talents than you do. They can do things better than you. And sometimes they'll get uppity and think, woo, I'm smoking, but they're not. They're little kids and they're making some of the same basic mistakes that you make, just in a different way. And so I'll finish up by saying it's a parable that Jesus has given me, and I've enacted it. So it's called a living parable. One of the things Jesus taught me in kindergarten is that there's parables and there's what's called living parables, where you actually enact the parable. Oh, you mean like the parable of sheep and you go around acting like a sheep? Correct. It's like you have a play. And so one of the things that he's helped me understand is that I need to have a sacred discipline of play. So the discipline of play is what I'm drawn to. It's not everybody's. It's just what I'm drawn to, and it's kind of child-based. And so when I review my story, because in kindergarten we write this huge story called My Story with Jesus, or the Jesus Story, and it's kind of our new life with Jesus. And in my story, yeah, I'm in kindergarten, and that helps remind me, don't use your brain too much. Ask the teacher, why are we doing this? What's going on? So he's had me reflect on, look at what you're doing on Jesus TV, Greg. What does that remind you of? and you know, when we first started doing these episodes, Emily, I didn't make that connection. But then he goes, behold, look. I'm like, oh, it's like kindergarten. Emily paints like we do in kindergarten, but she's gifted and talented. Yeah, we all have different gifts and talents. She's gifted and talented painter. And I'd already drawn a lot of stuff like this block right here. Jesus and I did this together, Jesus TVs. You can see the art. You know, I don't want to be uppity or anything. So you look at Emily's stuff and my stuff, pretty much the same, kindergarten level stuff. But I like hers a lot because, like, oh, and God says, don't envy that. I can do that in a heartbeat with you if you want, but it's not in my heart yet to do. And so I'd rather have other miracles. I'd like to just watch Emily do what she does. Okay, well, that's you now have the parable of kindergarten. There's other parables that people use, like in formal religion, they wouldn't have that parable. I don't even know if they have a parable that would be adequate for me, but God needed something to say, all right, here's the story generally that you need to understand. And what he's done to end, this is the end, is he's reinforced it. And that's what he will do, is he will, if he gives you a story, like a parable, he will reinforce it, and he will, it's called, he will give you second and third witnesses, like, yes, this is the story. And so, Emily, your art, anytime I think about you painting with your fingers and doing this messy stuff, it just delights me. I'm like, whoo, hey, that's Jesus telling me you are literally in kindergarten. There you go. Anybody?
I just had a thought. I'm like, sometime if we're ever all in the same place, we should do a paint day together. You guys should come make art with me. And that would be great. If you ever happen to be over where I am in Utah, we should do like a filming one where we just all make art together. Yeah. Because like you said, it's kind of funny. Anybody can actually do this. I mean, I don't know if you guys have watched what I'm doing, but like, I can actually kind of see a face in this one, which is why I stopped on it. Can you guys see like a little profile of Jesus looking down? Like that kind of looks like a beard to me.
Oh, I see it.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, it's just.
I see.
I see a cat. I don't know.
You see a cat?
There's something. There's a face there with a nose.
I see like an eye. Yeah. And a nose.
Oh no, and the eye go up higher, and there's another eye in the nose. Yeah, there's like some kind of animal there, but maybe.
Oh, there could be a cat.
Yeah.
I don't know. I left this one because right now I just like this. I don't know if I'm going to go back to it and do anything, but I just left it. As you were talking, and as you were talking about, again, reaching to those childlike or kindergarten part of ourselves, I was digging through one of my containers I've had down here forever, and I found all these tools I used to use that I forgot about. So then I was like all excited, and I was like, oh yeah, I used to use this brayer. So this is a brayer. It's like a rolling pin. It's used for printmaking, but it's just like a rolling pin. And then I forgot. I bought this new like permanent ink. It's like a calligraphy ink that's really, I just forgot that I had this. I bought this like 2 years ago. I forgot that I bought it, and I found some more of my spoons and forks. We got a soup spoon here, so this can like scrape up a lot of paint. And then this one I was working on, I don't know if you guys can see this on the video. I'm going to try to pull it up. So I'm mixing oil and acrylic and like water-based stuff. And there's areas where the black ink is like separating around the oil. So it's like oil and water. And can you guys tell that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I can see it here. Yeah. And so it's kind of making an interesting look. Like it's very uncontrollable. And it's like when you have two things that don't mix, and how do you make them go together? And I feel like we are kind of like that with God when we're becoming childlike, like you said, like you're 59. I just had my birthday. I'm 41. So I'm in my 40s. So I'm still kind of in the area, because I'm still in my 40s. I can still kind of get away with some things. That's what I've decided.
You're in the exploration phase before.
Yeah. So when I started this, I was in my 30s. So that was totally like, yeah, you can do weird stuff. You're still in your 30s, right?
Right.
And then also, it's kind of funny. I only have a master's in art. I didn't get a PhD or anything. But the funny thing is that because I'm an art person, I've always kind of had an excuse to do weird stuff.
Yes.
Because people are like, oh, you're in the art, you're kind of weird. And I've always loved that. I have this excuse to do weird things. And people will be like, oh, you're an artist.
I get the same allowance. I get the same allowance by being mentally ill. It's not as It's not as prestigious, but it gives you a whole lot of freedom. It's kind of like I'm sick. Oh, okay, Greg's sick. That's why he's not doing normal things. Yeah. So, and I'm totally serious about that. When I got born again, Jesus told me that the people who are building Zion, they will think they're mentally ill, and one reason is because they will be. And I was going through an episode of mania, anxiety, depression, and it blew my mind. I'm like, it's sociologically, it's called the sick role. Somebody can show up, not show up to work and still keep their job. Do you know how they do it? It's called a sick day. They can do it the next day. They can do it the next day. And that's called the sick role. So if you're playing the sick role, so what he did is he hobbled me, and he told me why he was hobbling me, that my family would, so like my extended family, they still think I'm crazy. You know what? They're right. I'm not putting on a show. But I feel the freedom. I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord. Because then they stop judging, like, oh, yeah, we can't judge Greg. Because otherwise they'd be very judgmental, thinking he's gone off the rails. Well, he actually has on the crazy train. He's crazy. So there's enough mental illness and so forth around, like depressed people, that basically I'm untouchable from good people. They're like, oh, yeah, sorry, Greg. Sorry. And I'm like, woo, I get to worship Jesus. The shackles are off socially. And I hope they don't watch this episode. They're like, oh, he's not really crazy. Hold it. If they watch this episode, they'd go, it only confirms. So anyhow, that's what I'm talking about. The artist label. Oh yeah, that thing opens up a big wide box.
On the crazy level. And I was like, I can verify that you're certifiably crazy. I could verify that. Yeah. That was definitely, when I first looked at some of your stuff, I was like, this guy's crazy. I didn't realize you were using it as a crutch, but I was like, he's crazy, but somehow we get along. I don't know what that says about me. I must be certifiably crazy too.
That's right. Yeah. Pointing at somebody with 3 fingers, still pointing at yourself. Look at this guy's crazy. Yeah. That's the beauty and the conundrum. That's the God we worship, that irony in such abundance. He flips the tables. He'll take the low misfits. He'll go, these are my leaders. And you're like, what? And so it fits all the patterns that you would find in the scriptures. Scriptorians who deeply study this know that is the pattern, that he will take those. And he doesn't just leave them there. If people went back to our earlier episodes, they would say, oh, these are rougher. Right, because you get better and better at your craft. If you keep going on Jesus TV, I don't care if you're crazy, you'll get better at it if you're paying attention, if you're not wildly crazy. Same thing as you pick up a guitar and play 8 hours. Well, that's crazy, right? You do that day after day. Guess what's going to happen? It's called fruit. It will create fruit. Now, if you sing songs about darkness and hell, it'll just get darker and darker, probably. If you sing about I want to be like Jesus, the one thing I'll tell you is you'll get better on the guitar, because we are adaptable creatures. And so that's what so I'm basically over the looking at people and asking if they're crazy. I'm looking at their fruits. By their fruits ye shall know them. So when I look at your art, if the first thing I knew about you, Emily, is, oh, she's ADHD, she's got these other things on the spectrum. Oh yeah, I can look at the DSM. Well, I got to reject her. No. Look at her art. Oh, it's my favorite friend. It's Jesus. Oh, not just 1, 2, 3. Oh, and she's getting rejected by Babylon, meaning these institutions are rejecting her because of her Jesus theme. She's my friend. Well, why? Because she's getting rejected. And does that mean all the artists who aren't rejected are bad people? No, they're all good people. Jesus loves them all. And somehow I know that rings true. He loves the artists that get in there who go, yeah, I'm not gonna do Jesus because I can't get in this art show and I need to build my resume. I totally get that. They need to feed their family. So running heavy on Jesus, that can affect your income. I know that personally. But yeah, that's anyhow. Go ahead, Jonathan.
So, the interesting thing, the reason that, okay, so a word that comes to mind is peculiar. And, it's like Jehovah said, I have a peculiar people. My people is a peculiar people. And the reason that they've always seemed kind of peculiar, it's like whenever there's been an instance of God moving, it's usually been with people who were, I think part of the reason, to skip the explanations, is that it requires a degree of trust. And so like the world, the way the world functions is in an attempt to do all that they can to avoid faith. So it's like we all have good ideas about faith, but the whole idea is, well, I'm going to exercise faith to create this business so that I can have all this money and then not have to exercise faith. Right? So it's like even like worldly aspiration is founded in a desire not to live by faith, not to trust, but to avoid trust. And so the truth is the only way that you can kind of get somebody to be willing to do something outside of that model is when they're kind of broken to other things. In other words, like, well, I'd like to do these other things, but I can't really bring myself to. And sometimes it's just a focus. Like, for example, it's like, you know, someone could say, well, why does Emily always paint Jesus? Well, because it's all she can see. Well, in a sense, that's kind of strange. You know, it's like any time, and yet beauty comes out of this, because it's like, well, I'm going to move in this direction. I'm going to exercise faith. I'm going to trust. I'm going to make this part of my life not about getting gain. So like I loved it that Emily was talking about, you know, it's like, well, I've tried to create, you know, I teach and my husband works. We try to do all this so that this one area of our lives can be sacred. It can escape the trappings of the worldly pursuit of personal profit, because that's what the world is about, is the pursuit of personal profit. And it infects everything. It's like the minute that your art, your career, your whatever becomes, you know, it's like when you can be threatened that, you know, it's like, well, if you don't do it, you know, the way that will sell, then we're not going to buy. Then it's like, oh, and that means, well, I could lose my house. I could lose my, you know, my wife could hate me and leave me. My husband could, you know, my children, you know, and it's like, and the ultimate threat of the world really is you're gonna die. You're gonna die. That's kind of behind everything. It's like, well, if you don't take this better job, if you don't do this thing, well, then you could lose your job. You could lose everything you care about. You know, it's like you could end up on the street and you could die. That's a little bit extreme, I think, but I've discovered that it's kind of there and underlying. It's like until you get to that place where it feels like you've kind of lost your life, it's like, well, I was all about doing these important things, and then it's like something happened. It was like everything I was living for, you know, personally, without going into details, it was like everything I was striving towards and that I cared about was kind of stripped. It was like, so it's like, oh, well, wait a minute. There's not anything anymore that can, things don't loom so much. It's like once you've lost the thing that you cared about most, the thing for which you were living, for which you still live, then but that you can't, that it's taken from you, then it's like, then you can do things that are out of the ordinary without fear of, so I've gone off the rails a little bit, but to bring it back, I'm starting to see Jesus in that
me
one.
too.
Yeah. So to bring it full circle, so I'll tell a little story, and I'll try to be quick, about trusting. So I was on this trip with family, and for a period of time we were by the ocean. It was a long trip, probably 10 months long. We were by the ocean, and we never saw a sea star the whole time we were there. We walked on the beach every day, until this one day. And a member of my family felt kind of impressed in a strange way to take it home and preserve it, which they didn't want to do. They didn't want to kill the sea star. But there was kind of this feeling like, no, this is, like, you know, they could almost hear the sea star. It's like, no, I want you to take me home and remember something, you know? And they didn't. And so they felt kind of bad about that. And a week or two, because they kind of felt like it was a spiritual impression. So a week or two passes. And then, you know, we've been there like 6 months. And this for the second time, and that first sea star was in the driveway. So across the street from the beach, it was like right in front of where you'd go in the driveway to where we lived. It's really strange. Why is there a sea star here by the sidewalk, you know? And then the second time, one just like washed up on the beach or something. And the person that had felt that was going to grab it. And then one of the other kids grabbed it and threw it out into the ocean so it would live. And then it happened a third time. And so they took this sea star home. And then some time passed and we were on the road again. And we were probably 100 miles from the ocean. And I'm walking along with my daughter and she says, "Dad, look, there's a sea star." And she points underneath a bush. And I'm thinking to myself, it's not a sea star. You know, we're 100 miles from the ocean. There's not a sea star under the bush. And I pin down and I look under the bush and there's a sea star. Whoa, you know, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So I take the sea star. Of course, this one's all dried out now. And the third one that came along, we kept. So we had one before, and I take the second one, and I take it in, and we're sitting there looking at these two sea stars, like, why? So God, you know, this is the weird way that I think God, you know, God talks to us in so many strange ways, and it's like, we're looking at these, like, what is this? And so we start looking up on the internet about sea stars. Well, one of the things we find out right away is that sea stars are like a bundle of nerves. There's no brain, okay? So sea stars do not have a brain. All they have are just these tentacle-like nerves that go out throughout the whole body of the sea star. And they'll creep along the rock or along where they're at, and they'll kind of reach out and feel, you know, and if it feels safe, you know, then they move, they'll continue going in that direction. But they're all feeling, and so they can't think. And immediately we had an impression. It's like that the reason we'd been given this was you're supposed to feel and not think. And we're like, oh, wow. Well, that's tricky. You know, it's like, because what do we want to do? We want to think. And it's like, and unless, like, I wonder if the reason that, you know, like you're talking about, Greg, how the way that this new life kind of came to you was through a period of where the thinker kind of got off, is that it's like that puts us in this position where we have to start to feel out. It's like we don't have the answers, right? It's like before it was like, yeah, it's easy. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to put in my time. You know, I'm going to get that consulting fee and earn $300, $600 an hour. I can't remember how much you were making, but you know, like I'll go out and I'll do it. And it's, you know, it's like taking care of the basic things of life is so simple, but now it's not. And it's like, and you're listening and you're reaching out like that sea star, right? And you're just feeling
all the time, crying out all the time. It just doesn't let up. Yep.
Oh, I need an intimation. because like everybody else, it's like, it's easy. You know, it's like there was a period I couldn't work like normal people. And they're like, people couldn't understand. Why don't you just get a job? And I was like, well, I am taking jobs, but you know, they're here and there, and I can't stay at any place very long. And it would have been a lot easier if like my leg was in a cast. Does that make sense? It's like I have a reason now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Emily, like you were saying, you know, it's like I'm an artist. I have this excuse, you know, and it's like I wish it was like during that time. It was like, but it was like something had slipped on the inside. It's like you don't get it. So I'm broken to the way that the world does everything, and so it would have been so much easier if I were blind and I could point to my eyes. I can't see, you know, But because it was on the inside, it was like it was so hard to describe to people why I couldn't live the way that most people live. And so what that does, what I wonder is if it's like some of us have been hobbled early, because what I wonder is I wonder if that's what's coming for the world. It's like we're creating this kind of Tower of Babel. I wrote a poem this week, well, a couple weeks ago. I've got a bunch of stuff I've got to release still, but this about this leaning Tower of Babel. This technology, everything, we created this world where we're kind of cruising for a beating. It's like there's going to come a time where it's like we've tried to approach God. We've tried to mimic heaven. Our lives are like heaven. Like we can control the temperature. We can, we can talk to people across the world the way they do in heaven without being close to them. It's like, but when you try to approach God like that and you create this Tower of Babel, eventually it'll break down. And so I have the feeling like the time's going to come where God's going to give people the opportunity to be like, oh my gosh, everything that I created in my life to bring me ease and everything is not working anymore. And they're going to have to, like the sea stars, reach out and feeling. They're going to have to like not think, because thinking won't do it for us anymore. And so yeah, I'm still in that position. I still I think I've said what I was going to say. Any thoughts about that, you guys?
Well, one of the things that remind me of is what both of you said is life gives us stuff not only to make us like childlike, but also to like kind of handicap or make it hard for us to move forward. And usually this is something I've thought about a lot, and actually that I also learned through a dream too. But sometimes what appears to be the absolute worst thing possible becomes the best thing.
Right.
And like I resonate with so much of what both of you are saying. There's like you said, with mental illness and things like that, there's kind of this, it's because it's all on the inside, you can't see it. It reminds me of, I have 3 kids, and my oldest is on the autism spectrum. And when he was really little, when he was like 2, and when he was a baby, it was so challenging. And when he was like 2, it was just all, we couldn't go anywhere. He always had to cover his ears. He was like scared of everything. He would just scream and cry. He couldn't talk at all. It was really hard for him to learn how to talk. And now he just always talks. It's a lot of fun. But which I'm really thankful for, because that doesn't happen for everyone. And but I remember her. So she had a son that was I don't remember exactly what he had, but he was more severely disabled. He couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair from the time he was born. Like, or always. So he was definitely like someone that was physically disabled. And she said, in some ways, she's like, I think it's a lot harder, like autism or things like that are a lot harder, because she's like, if someone's mean to a kid in a wheelchair, like you have to be a real jerk to be mean to a kid in a wheelchair. But like, if you're, but people are just mean to each other, or like they might be mean, not knowing that he is not mentally in the same space as them, and they don't realize how that affects them. And that's something that I've kind of resonated with too. It reminded me of that, just with what both of you were saying. Especially you, Jonathan, when you were saying like for a while you maybe couldn't work. I don't know the story, but you couldn't do something, and people were like, "What's wrong with this guy?" And you're like, "Well, yeah, there is something wrong, and it's mentally." And so I think there's that. There's so much. So many things are hidden. I think there's also that, which reminds me of that scripture that says, "May hidden things come to light," right? Which reminds me of that, which is could be taken in a whole. There's many different connotations, I think, for that scripture. But there's that whole idea of just there's so much that we don't see and understand. I try to be really, really open about my mental illness, especially with like my students when I teach high school and stuff, because I have like anxiety, I have ADHD, I have a lot of depression, I have some sensory stuff. I'm not autistic. I haven't been diagnosed as autistic, but I definitely have some weird stuff, and I have a number of kids with it. I have 2 of my 3 children are on the spectrum, so it's got to come from somewhere, And so I'm just like, just not quite, I think, enough to be diagnosed with anything, but I'm definitely a little bit odd. And I've always been kind of awkward and odd. And and it's hard to, I think, embrace that. But the more I'm open with these things, the more I can connect to others. Because it used to be 20 years ago, you didn't talk about this. Like when I was in college, it was like, I remember one of my roommates being like, "Oh, I can't believe you like tell people you have depression and you go to counseling." And I was like, "It's not a big deal. I'm trying to make it not be a big deal because it's not a big deal."
Yeah.
But now it's like I hear about it everywhere I go. I don't even know anyone that doesn't have something. Every single person I know struggles with some kind of something mentally. It might be speech thing, it might be a learning disability, it might be physical. Like everybody has their thing. And just because you don't know it doesn't mean they don't have their thing.
Yeah,
that's my thoughts.
I just interject there. It's fun to me. It's curious to me as I see what comes on the ads when I go to YouTube. And nowadays it's like it's all these therapy places, do therapy over the internet and this and that. And I just kind of chuckle now and then. I mean, it's the new industry. It's like the minute there is a need, it's like somebody's like, hey, I could build a business around that, and so, they create this new online, therapy thing. And it's like, and the whole world now is saying outright, like, something's wrong on the inside. It's like, I can't. And of course, this is the preface to the time where we'll begin to see outwardly the results of our inward brokenness. It's like we've had a society that's very focused on things that are harmful to the soul, and all of us are now have harmed souls. It's like harmed souls, and so hospital.
Yeah. So in kindergarten, which I'm always in, as I said, Jesus has me build things in his kingdom. So I'm building with Jesus this huge project. It's called My Jesus Greg World. And it's so huge, you would almost need a PhD, except for that wouldn't help you. You have to actually be in kindergarten, and then Jesus will tell you how to build one of these. But in that world that I'm building, yep, I have a radio station. It's not mine, it's Jesus's, but I get to be on it, and a TV station. You're watching the TV station right now, and we have good programming. Jesus hooked us up with Jonathan McCormick living in a van in Quartzsite, Arizona. We have Emily painting with her fingers pictures of Jesus. And part of that world, he says, all the major institutions, Greg, I'm going to insert them into your Jesus world because you're going to need these things. And so the topic that Jonathan, you and Emily were just doing, this is the segue. And pardon me if I do it like an Aspergery person, because I probably have a little touch of Aspergery when I came. So it's not that that's the favorite part of the burger, but if it's got to be an Asperger, I guess that's okay. I have Asperger's. And what you see here is a hospital. So in my Jesus Greg world, I have something you'd find in Babylon, is a hospital. And notice it has what's called an extension. So hospital, sometimes you'll find mental health extended with the hospital, because the hospitals can make more money if they're not just dealing with broken bones, but broken minds. And so that's often what you'll find. And that's true in my Jesus Greg world. And do you see what this one says? Can you read that?
It's kind of backwards because
It's backwards.
Oh, it says ward. Okay.
Oh.
So mental health ward. So at 11:30 today, I go to what's called group therapy. Now, most people know it as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints ward, but Jesus told me that's the mental health ward. People who are sick in their head, and they're sick because they're sinners, because anything that's sin takes you away from Jesus. You can be crazy to get further away from Jesus, but that's all sin is, things that take you away from Jesus. That's what I learned in my therapy sessions with Jesus, because he's my therapist. And he says, you're going to need a lot of group therapy. And so then he told me what this is. It's an extension, and not everybody has one of these or goes to the to the mental health ward of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Some go to the Catholic congregation. It's the same thing, but can you see how the hospital has an extension, and that's you see what it's carried by. It's a nail. Guess what that nail reminds me of when it gets pounded into this wood? Well, Emily's painting that person that it reminds me of, because notice this has got a big nail. So these are
those are long nails.
Yeah, there's a big old rusty nail. And when I pounded it in there, guess what I thought of? Jesus getting pounded into the cross. But also, see, when you come into this life, Jesus has something to give you. And he got one of them. It's called a cross. And you get to have one and go through your life. And he'll often talk about this, and it's hard to take serious. Pick up your cross and learn of me. Well, that's a pretty brutal parable, but it's finally kind of like advanced kindergarten, so I'm still learning about it, is that in order to have the most peaceful time on earth, you have to have one of the roughest times on earth. And it seems like there's opposition in all things. If it were not so, my firstborn in the wilderness, righteousness could not be brought to pass, neither wickedness, neither holiness nor misery. It is necessary that you have opposition. Otherwise, everything's compound in one. It turns out like AI, just going to produce the same old. Well, that's what it made me think of. And so when you guys were talking, I was thinking, hey, Jesus, you know what this is like? It's church. Could we call it Emily's church? No, I think we'll call it Jesus Church, Jesus Paint Church. And what am I doing right now? Oh, I think it's called group therapy. And who's the group? Well, there's Emily, there's Jonathan, there's Greg. Oh, and he's having us record it so that other people, so whether you know it or not, you're getting group therapy. And I have the talking stick. So you're like, that guy's talking too much in group therapy. So I'll be quiet right now. There you go.
I like where the painting's going. It's interesting.
And these are available. I'll create one of these blocks for you for $13.99. Just Venmo me the money at Go Muller. That's the Venmo, GOMULLER. And I might use your money for milk, although we've got a gallon. And Jonathan, if somebody wanted to send you money, where would they send it to? This is an advertisement, by the way.
They can send it to the Trackless Path is my Venmo, and then the Trackless Path at Gmail is PayPal. So
that's right. So if Jesus tells you to, if he tells you to send him money, don't send us money unless Jesus tells you to. You could ruin us with your money. People are like, I don't think I'd ruin you. Well, it depends how much you send. I do know Jesus kind of keeps me on the low, so I'm always crying out to him. My wife likes toilet paper. I myself could live without toilet paper, Jesus, but I get lots of complaints. And although my wife is actually saying we ought to buy these bidet things, because I think the Spirit's telling her there may come a time when toilet paper is hard to find, and learning to squish a little bottle and clean yourself up. So sounds like kindergarten stuff to me, camping with kindergartners. Okay, Emily, if somebody wanted to buy one of those paintings and send you a big sweaty wad of cash, how would they find your art and send you sweaty wads of cash?
The easiest way is probably just to Google me, Emily Powell Art. My name is spelled, I don't see it up there right now. Sometimes you can see my name up there. It's spelled a little bit different. Just look in like the description or something, I guess, right?
Yes.
But I guess I should put my name in. Sometimes you can see your names on Zoom. Sometimes we can't. Yeah, I don't know why I can't right now. Anyways.
I don't know if I can.
Yeah, I can't right now either. So it's just Emily Powell Art. Even if you spell my name wrong, you can probably find me. Messaging me on Instagram or Facebook works pretty well. Probably find my website in there somewhere and send me an email. Any of those ways work for me.
Or if you're a very good listener, you could hashtag Hear Jesus, and he'd be able to put you in contact with each one of us miraculously. I usually need to know be reminded, okay, Jonathan, how do I send you money? And he sends me money. So Jesus will have people in the low. This is the thing that breaks my heart. The people who send me money. I mean, I'm laughing with sadness. Oh my goodness, I don't want that money, Jesus, because he has these people who are so low themselves. It's like a homeless person goes, yeah, I'm supposed to give you this money. I was going to buy a hamburger, and my family's destitute, but here you go, Greg. And I was like, oh, can't you have a millionaire come and say, here you go, Greg? But no, that's, it blows my mind, but I know what he's doing. I have to.
Did I ever tell the story about the guy that gave me fried chicken, the homeless guy?
No.
I ran out of money once. It was just a strange circumstance. And I had an impression to take a walk, and I ran into a homeless guy and we started chatting. I had been homeless before, and so I find people like that kind of interesting. And so we just started chatting, and I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. And he says, hey, do you want some fried chicken? I was like, yeah, like I'm out of food, so that would be great. And he hands me this bag. He says, yeah, I've been here panhandling, and this guy went and bought me fried chicken. And he says, but I can't eat it all. And so that's how I ate that meal. And I remember it was actually, it deeply impressed me. Like I kind of stopped worrying about stuff like that. Well, it took me time, but that was a key moment. So I don't know. It's like stuff like that seems like it's important. It's like, I think that the little things are I don't know, I found them to be more instrumental in changing our mental framework, and the way that we see and the way we trust than the big things. It's like you can read about it all day long, but until you actually need fried chicken, or, I didn't need fried chicken, but they actually need something, and then it's supplied in some miraculous way. It's like it.
Yeah, and one of the things Jesus told me, and he actually did this in a movie. He talks to me through movies that I make with him, and he said, when special forces who are very special and very powerful, and they got all these tools, when they go save somebody, the actual rescuer also oftentimes has to go very low to get where the person is. So imagine somebody's drowning in the ocean. That special forces person approximately puts themselves in the exact same danger as that person who's drowning. Oftentimes, it's in really bad conditions. Their very life, they may not go home tonight, nor maybe the person they're saving. And so they put themselves in harm's way. Jesus said, that's what I'm going to do with you. I'm going to bring you low. You'll understand the mentally ill because you're going to be mentally ill. You're going to finally realize you've been mentally ill your whole life. If sin is mentally ill, which it is, I mean, it's crazy to do some of the things that we do in Babylon. Are you kidding me? You can dress them up like a pig, put some lipstick on it, but a lot of the stuff we do is crazy. And we'll realize that, just like we can realize 100 years later, some of the medical practices that people were doing 100 years ago, they were totally crazy. What were they thinking? Well, they're doing the best they could, I know, but it looks crazy. And so sometimes people are trying to do the best they can. They're in the throes of sin. And you think, why would somebody stay with her or stay with him? Well, you're not in the throes. You're not in that place. So Jesus sometimes will take you and put you for a while. I call it getting waterboarded by Jesus. He likes to have me correct and say, no, it's like getting baptized, Greg. I mean, it involves a little scary. Yeah, it's a little scarier than when you're 8 years old and getting baptized. But now you're an adult. I can hold you underwater longer. I'm going to die. No, you're not going to die. You wish you were going to die by the time I'm done with you. And so that's a parable, of course. It's the waterboarding parable. He helps me understand because he's like, what does this feel like, Greg? Because I started learning to trust him in some of these very rough things. And then we could talk about it and say, what does that feel like? Oh, it feels like I'm getting waterboarded. Because waterboarding is like one of the worst things you can do, right up to killing somebody. That's how you extract information. And so in the waterboarding parable, He goes, I'm going to get you to sing. So that's what you would say. Like if you capture somebody, you need to get information. We're going to make this guy sing by torturing them. And what's he going to sing? I think he's going to sing about Jesus. So Jesus will put me under intense pressure. Every knee shall bow, every tongue confess. Greg, are you ready to confess? Yes, you're the Lord. Are you ready to do that with your heart? Is it broken? I need some more help. So he'll waterboard me. He will put me in difficult circumstances. So I've never been literally waterboarded, but have I been metaphorically and parably waterboarded? Oh, every day. And I'm getting used to it. So I suppose if you're waterboarded every day, your special forces, you said, we need to train. You could get more and more used to difficult circumstances. And that would be the hardest one, dropping you out in the wilderness and making you come back just eating leaves and so forth and animals you find. You could get more and more used to that because we are, once again, adaptive creatures. Our humanness is a kind friend to us because it'll adapt to whatever. It's also the enemy because it'll adapt to crazy sin. So where was I going with that? Well, I can't remember. Oh, the difficulties that we face, including mental illness. Jesus will take us to places that allow us to serve others, that he'll prepare us. Oh, I'm going to go help some low people. Do I need a suit? Do I need to go to Mr. Max? No, you won't need to go to Mr. Max. I need you to go to the clothing bank and get stuff so that people will feel comfortable. They don't need to see you in a tie. They need to see you in things that have holes, Greg. Why? Because then you'll be like them. Oh, okay, so I'm dressing up for my mission. and you're like, well, hold it, Greg, that's a necessity. You are outfitting your child, because I have a boy right now. Oh, if you want to donate to his mission, he just got called to a service mission at home. Go Muller. That's right. Jesus just told me to do that. There may be somebody who wants to donate to his mission. Go Muller is the Venmo, and it's gomuller@gmail.com is the PayPal, but I'm not sensing that that's necessary. I think the person's going to use Venmo, but yeah, he needs some clothes because it's a service mission. But we gathered together, had a prayer, and then we went down to the clothing bank, his mom and he did, and got some shirts, but he needs a few more things that probably will take some sweaty wads of cash. So if Jesus puts it into your heart to do that, that's fine. I don't care, because I'm going to beg. I'm going to beg for the rest of my life. Beg for Jesus? Oh, absolutely. And then I'm going to become a flow through like Jonathan taught me. No, he wants us to have a bunch of stuff and then get rid of it. What's he want me to do with it? Give it to poor people. Well, hold it. Why would he give it to me? So you can give it to somebody else. Well, that doesn't make sense. You're supposed to get a 401k together. That this is not making sense. Mentally ill people would say, oh, I just got $100,000. I think I'll pay off my student loan, which wouldn't quite cover mine. Nope, you're not going to do that. What am I going to do? You're going to make a minimum payment on that, and then you're going to feed homeless people. So I'm not there yet, but I'm learning to become a flow through of very small means. He'll give me stuff and then have me flow it through. And that's what he does with other people too. So speaking of flow through, I have to go. There's a guy that's coming for this, which is a $10 item. Woo! That my friend has. It's a laser pointer. So Jesus has me sell things. This is actually a Jesus laser pointer. So crazy people can sell things in the name of Jesus, which I like. I don't know if you can see that. Is that laser pointing? Oh, there we go. Can you see the laser?
No,
Not really.
Oh, I just saw it on your beard.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I see the light on it. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay. So I was pointing at Emily's painting. So I'm going to leave these guys talking, which probably is a good thing, and have Emily, if she will, talk about where she's at on this painting. I'm going to come back. I'm going to go sell this for, I think, anyways, if this person shows up, for $10. Then my friend gets 5 and I get 5. So see, we got money. We're good. It's like we have manna. We don't have a big old stack of it, but we're good for today. So when I say don't give me money unless Jesus tells you to, you don't need to. I ain't gonna die. unless Jesus wants me to die, nor is my family. So I'm getting used to running it that way. You guys can talk. I'll be back. This person said they're going to meet me about this time. So it's just at my house. I'll be right back.
Yeah. I guess I can talk about where I'm at on here. I don't know. I just keep going on it. Like I said, I rediscovered my whole, I didn't know where this container was. This is a container of all my tools that I would paint with. So these are actually sculpture tools and like carving tools. So now I'm just going on and I'm just kind of carving away. Something that's been really hard for me this session is I want to use my right hand so badly because my left hand is so, I call it handicapped, but my left hand is so hard. Like I can't get curves. I was trying to do circles and like I can't get them with my left hand. I was trying to get like exact lines and I can't do it. I just can't do it. And so it's just been pretty frustrating, but I've also just had a lot of fun just carving it away. Right now what I'm doing, what I'm really liking is, I'll try to pull it in up here so you can see it kind of. So this painting has a lot of layers. It has like lots of layers of paint and like the drywall mud that you use on your house. That's how I do the start of my textures. One of these episodes I'll do one where I started out like from nothing. Probably sometime I'll do that. I have a lot to work with though first, but yeah, and so I have a lot of stuff I can scrape away, and as I scrape it away, I see the underneath paint and the underneath layers. Like if you look in this spot, and I don't know if you guys can tell on the thing, in this spot right here, there's like a really tiny brown dot, and I don't think you guys can see that, but not really. Anyways, it's a layer chipping away underneath, and so there's lots of chipping. So I'm trying to add highlights by scratching them away. And then what's nice is when I rub some of this alizarin crimson over the top, it kind of catches some of the edges in like interesting ways. It just makes it look really old and worn. So some of my paintings, like the one I did, our first episode, I added a lot of paint and that's how I created details. This one, I'm removing layers to create details. And it just gives it a different look. It's a little bit of a harsher look. And I don't know why, like he said, I just play and I'm just like, I'm really liking carving this stuff away right now. It's really fun. Some of the other things I used during this is a piece of like wood that I burned in a fire. I was doing paintings for a while with like ashes on fire, kind of a whole idea of like from these ashes, or raised from the ashes. I don't know. It's not quite like charcoal wood. I mean, it's a mostly burnt piece of wood. Like right here, it's not actually that burnt. So I was trying to draw with that, and it's so hard. I mean, it's like a huge chunk. And so that's kind of what I'm exploring with today, and I'm just enjoying listening to you guys. Yeah, I'm just enjoying listening.
Well, it's interesting. Go ahead, sorry.
Yes. No, you cut out right there. I'm just waiting.
I like this one. It feels kind of harsh, but maybe it won't end up that way. It'll be interesting to see. I thought he was bleeding at first, but now I'm realizing it's kind of it's adding that other color. Now, and maybe he's bleeding too. But
I wasn't thinking bleeding, but I could definitely see. That's why sometimes I hesitate to use red because it does look like blood.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the intent that I had, but I could definitely see how it could be taken that way, like very, very easily. Yeah, this one to me kind of feels like I would call this like a crucifixion one or a cross one. It has more of like an end of life feel to it.
Yeah.
Versus like a beginning of, if you were going to put it in a timeline versus like a beginning of a ministry. And I guess as I'm doing it, I'm just thinking about how we all have our things that make it so we have to come to Jesus. It might be mental illness, it might be other circumstances in our lives that make us, it's like, for me, I have to do like, my life has to be such that I have to be made to seek Jesus, because if everything's going amazing, then I don't seek him out. It's kind of I think that's probably for a lot of people. It's like you have to kind of almost have to be forced. Not forced. Oh, I know there's a scripture that says, you can either be humble or you can be I don't remember the exact scripture. It's in Alma
Compelled to be humble.
somewhere. Yeah, compelled to be humble. There you go. It's like Alma 32, I think. But it's like you can be compelled. But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing here is I'm just scratching it away. Sometimes it flecks off big chunks as I scratch it. I can't really control it. And like I said, I've mixed a lot of layers of like oil and water based stuff. And so that it kind of does uncontrollable things. And again,
Yeah.
it's really hard. There's so many times we've been talking. I'm like, if I could just do a tiny bit with my right hand, I could just get like this little edge, like exactly what I want it to be and what I kind of am envisioning. Another interesting thing, as I create these, like, I don't know like today, this is not what I planned on doing at all. I didn't know which direction I was going to go, but it's like, as I do it, I just get ideas like, oh, I feel like using this tool, so I'm going to use it. Or I went this other direction and like, I don't know. It just keeps kind of changing and it kind of morphs. But our time's about done for today. And I don't know if I'm going to keep working on this. I'll probably stop because I have some other things. I'm supposed to do like a presentation later today. So I've got to get some other art stuff and things together. But yeah,
Okay.
that's I actually kind of really like this just like this, honestly. Maybe I will just leave it and call it done.
It feels really good. It feels like I say, kind of harsh and darker. But it's that I'm not finding the word for it, but it's I don't know. It's like that finding. There's something you find in the extremity, in the thing that you just can't imagine happening that comes. I'll actually close with, I actually had a thought when you were talking before. I know we need to close it down, which we can do right now, but I was going to say it's been on my mind lately. It's almost like the scriptures have two ways to talk about the coming of Jesus, his second coming. And one way is like this glorious day, he comes in the cloud, etc. But then it's like there's a bunch of scriptures that really talks about when I come, and when I speak, and he talks about speaking with the voice of thunder and lightning and earthquakes and etc. So it's like when he comes again, when he comes to us personally, and I'm speaking like in that broad sense that where he comes into our lives individually, not so much about the second coming we've thought about for so long, but it often it's like an eternal truth that he comes into our lives. When he does, it's tumultuous, and it's painful. And in many instances, I don't think it's so much that he's inflicting something upon us, but it's like he comes because he is truth, the truth of all of our past actions, our ancestors' actions, all of you could say almost like in the Eastern sense, the karmic debt. He lets it hit us. It's like it's a moment of kind of like a different version of grace. He graces us with the chance to suffer like he suffered in a way. But for him, it was unwarranted. For us, it's often warranted in some way. It's like we realize it was me or my ancestors or something that's brought something into my life. And so we have to be so humble about it. But I don't know. I really like this one. So you might be right. It might be done.
I think it is done. I think I'm done with it. I actually decided. So I did use my right hand just in the bottom. And that was just to try to sign it with my name. It's hard to see, but if you're in person, you can see it there.
Yep. Good.
And I don't know. I'll write about this one later. But
okay.
Yeah, this one is probably, I don't know what I would sell this one for. This is probably a $200 one. It's not that. It's like probably 10 by 10 inches. I have to measure it and see. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this one's done, and I'll write about it later and post it and email it out to you guys. But yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what it'll be or what it'll be called. I kind of have to let things percolate for a little while. I have to let it kind of sit. And then later when I write about it, we'll see what kind of comes out.
Okay.
I think that's kind of where we're at. But thank you so much, guys. I really missed talking to you, both of you, the last few weeks. I got the first Sunday when we canceled that one, I got like really depressed, actually. I was just so sad. So sad
I'm
because I
sorry.
really look forward to this every week. And I was talking to one of my students the other day about this whole idea, but like I have a really hard time making art by myself. Like so
Mhm.
doing it on here is extremely helpful for me. Like I don't do it when we're not on here because I don't know. It's just I find it so much more fulfilling when we're talking, and I just like listening to what you guys say, and I just get so many ideas and get so inspired, and I
But
just love that, and it
well,
really shapes a lot of what I do. And it's one of my students said it's kind of the idea. Sometimes she's with they said with atypical people, they said sometimes it's like you have there's a word for it, and I can't remember it right now. But she said it's like sometimes there's something where it's like a side by side thing, but like really like some people really can't do stuff unless they're with someone else. And I kind of feel like I'm probably fall in that category, and that's why I teach, and that's why I do all these things. Because if I'm by myself, I kind of get sucked into my own zone, and I get really depressed, and I get really withdrawn, and I get stuck in zones. I'm pretty obsessive, and so like so I can get in the obsessive cycle of being like positive and working with others, or I can get stuck in the obsessive cycle of I'm just going to sit on my couch all day and do nothing, or I'm just going to read a book all day, which books are great. And I love reading and things like that. But it's kind of an interesting idea. I don't know.
yeah, and
Anyways,
let me comment upon that because there's something very important that Jesus told me. So when he had me be a street preacher, I mean, I was born kind of like an extrovert, although I was very shy as a child and so forth. Later, I understood and took the Myers-Briggs survey and realized, okay, I'm an ENTP. We naturally um, get energy from other people. But I realize we live in a Western society that emphasizes individualism, being able to do things by ourselves, and that is good. But what God has taught me, and this is like high order kindergarten knowledge. He said, Greg, entities, including God and the devil, every entity has a desire to reach out to others. They don't. Devil does not sit in his little corner and say, I'm not gonna work my tail off trying to make everybody devilish. I'm freaking just gonna stay here and just revel in my abandon." And he doesn't. He goes forth and preaches his gospel to every creature. He has this same desire, and he doesn't feel shameful. He's like, no, there's something in me that wants to reach out and let everybody know. And guess who else who has that, Greg? You do, Jesus. That's right. Entities. In other words, there's things that we could say go beyond God. Whatever our creature status is, whatever our DNA is, whatever our spiritual matter is, it has a desire to resonate, to go out and make a call. So it's called call and response, and it's a basic human thing. It's part of music, but it's part of everything. So call and response, you can see it easy in nature. Wolves crying out, and frogs crying out. Well, yeah, well they want to mate. Oh, even long past their mating season, they'll still want to go out. And I think Neil Diamond had it. I said, to no one there, and no one heard, not even the chair. So there's an instinct in us to do that. And what he was trying to tell me is don't apologize for that. He says that people will try to shut other people down because what they want is monopoly. They're like, oh yeah, I want to be heard, but Greg's talking all the freaking time. Shut it down. Feel shameful, Greg, that you can't do things by yourself. Why are you always doing this Jesus TV? Well, what I'd tell that person, poor soul, if you're shut down and you're all alone, that's not natural. Even the devil, even the worst of the worst, he's given permission by whatever, and it is in his instinct. But you don't think God is everywhere, talking all the time. And that's what I want to say, like with boldness, because I had to accept that so I could get over being a street preacher. Because when Jesus says, go in Walmart and yell at everybody, say, Jesus is in the house and he's in my heart and he wants me to sing you a song. Well, that sounds so weird, immature, disturbing. But we're all saying stuff. Everybody's communicating non-verbally, and I'm making a movie right now about that. So telling people to shut up, sorry, even when they're not talking, they're communicating. So by the car they chose, by how they present themselves, all this nonverbal, it's a very chatty existence we live in. And so, Emily, when you were talking about how you flow, that's natural. That's natural, and it's natural at the highest level. Gods, devils, we have an instinct, and understood simply, it's the call and response pattern. I accept it, but I also would like to say back to you that, yeah, I feel like when you came on board, woo, our quality went up, Jonathan. The Jesus TV just took a big leap forward. Whoa, one small step. No, this is a huge step, because first off, I like Jesus, and she likes doing Jesus, because some people are just going to wear themselves out. They can only take so much Jesus, but Emily's coming, more Jesus, and that's what I'm after. www.getmorejesus.com. That's the website Jesus created for me. He goes, you have a fever, Greg, and there's only one prescription, and that is more Jesus. And so it's like, oh, there you are again. And he's appearing all these different ways, like, oh yeah, I know that Jesus. And oh, Emmy's got another Jesus. And because these things that you do artistically emote things that I can't put in words, I could not write about them. But that's the nature of humans, is that we speak in imagery. And there's things that it says in the scriptures that tongue cannot utter, that there are things deep inside of us that can resonate with those kind of things. And but not just with those, it's a relationship. So the fact that Emily is a broken person, she's willing to share her brokenness, and then it's broken art. Whew, you can't talk any louder than that, Jesus. But the beauty that I see, because I want to see it, and because it's just there, I like it. So, and I know that other people will. And I like what Jesus has put in my heart. I don't care in Christ if they do. If it's just Emily, Jonathan, and Greg, and 10,000 angels, and Jesus and Heavenly Father and the Holy Ghost, the three men I admire most, I'm down with that. And that's what he's trained me to do. Is like, you're not trying to get a whole bunch of likes and get a whole following. You're trying to be a friend of Jesus. And that's how you get that peace that surpasses understanding, because that's what he's got me hooked with. Honestly, I'm hooked. If Jesus was a drug, I know the elements of that drug. It's peace that surpasses understanding. I don't even know why I'm more peaceful, because a lot of stuff I'm doing with you, Jesus, it's on the surface not very peaceful, but it calms certain things deep inside of me that have been screaming since I was born. Yeah, I was screaming as a little baby, but I think I never stopped screaming. Deep inside me, I'm like, oh, this world sucks. And now I can voice it. I'm an adult. I can say things like that. But I wasn't getting relief until I got more Jesus. And I don't know if this would work for other people. I tell people I think it could, but I'm running on beliefs. I don't know. I'm not so smart. But Jesus says, go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh, I just wanted to be the timekeeper. I know, Emily, you were saying you got to go pretty soon.
Yeah, I
do need to go. I do need to go.
Yeah, there's timing.
But I'm also just,
go ahead.
I'm also just having a really good time. So it's hard.
Yeah, thanks, you guys. I really enjoy these.
And I have to go to the mental health ward, which is the Cedar Creek ward, and talk with the other people who are sinners, crazy sinners. And we're going to have our group therapy where I don't get to talk like this. Jesus doesn't let me talk at church, because he says, I guess other people need more therapy than I do. Or I'm getting therapy all day long, every day. So that's why I'm walking right now. I got 5 minutes till I'll have to swing my arm. So God bless you till we meet again, which will be next week.
Next week. All right. Sounds good.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.